Hey guys, welcome back to Mo's Game Table. Today I've got with me Volko Ruhnke, who is going to discuss some of his latest games. We've got Hunt for Blackbeard, which will be coming back to P500 next year, and Nevsky, which should be delivering pretty soon. Volko, thanks for taking a few minutes to sit and talk with us.
Thanks, Mo. Glad to be here.
Appreciate it. Hunt for Blackbeard. We were talking about that a couple days ago, and saw it last night. Talk about the changes you've incorporated into the game now when it comes back to P500 next year.
Okay, great. So mechanically the game is very much the same. It's really performing the way I want in that regard. But I figured out that the sort of the user interface, the counters and the sheets were more annoying than they needed to be in terms of just going ahead and executing the game. And so came up with the idea of, instead of having markers that flip over, going ahead and springing for the little blocks. So it works like a block game. You can see all your forces, and the other guy can't see what's behind the block. Well, here it's like that Blackbeard is looking at the area, he sees everything, and he just goes ahead and does his moves right on that block map while the hunter's looking away. The hunters, when they do their searches, they're just looking at a field of the backs of the blocks. Sure. Works really well, and that means we can get rid of, first of all, a whole bag of counters that I used to use for record keeping behind the screens, because it's all out in the blocks now. And also can get rid of these little mini maps that we used to have, where you'd have to kind of do your move behind the screen and then reproduce it on the main map. Sure. That's all gone. The hunters have a log sheet that they want to use. We're finding in practice half the time the hunters don't even need that, actually, because it's a short enough game. It's easy enough to remember what you found, and that's all working really well. And so I think there's some testing going on, but I doubt very much it's going to change very much. We're doing a little thing like we might change the cost of this or that tile, something tiny like that. But I think the game's very well calibrated. We had 2 games last night that worked very well, and so. The next question is going to be, can we work out a way to play solitaire? I'm really skeptical, unfortunately, that we can, because it really is it's a brain-on-brain deduction game. You need a creative pirate and hunters trying to figure out what the pirate is doing. But we're gonna at least take a crack at it. I'm definitely not making promises on that. The other is to figure out what will the new price point be, because if we have, even though we're getting rid of counter sheets, if we add wood, that's gonna change the cost, unfortunately. So anyway, sometime next year, as you said, I'm hoping it'll come back on, and I'm kind of happy that we went through this, because I'm very confident it's a better product now than it was. And if people end up going for it in the end, we end up printing it, then we're now researching what would volumes 2, 3, and 4 be. 4. But there aren't volumes. There's no volume 2 if there's not a volume 1.
That's true.
So I'm looking at settings in the American Revolution, the American Civil War, and even World War II. Wow. For Hunt for blank.
You heard it here first. 4 games in the series. So if you haven't backed it on P500, definitely do so when it comes back out next year, because it was on P500, it was pulled off, now it's back out, hopefully sometime next year from GMT, but keep an eye out for that on their website. Now let's talk briefly about Nevsky, which has just come out. You were just playing with Mark Herman, and
so
we
had our exhibition match just now with Mark, who's I've just been really tickled that he's taken an interest. He grabbed one of the advanced copies from GMT Warehouse the other month, and so he's been learning it, and he's got a really interesting strategy article out, both on Inside GMT or BGG, and you can look at what he thinks of how the game works. And so that's, I feel like for me, that's almost like armor plating. I mean, if Mark Herman says you're on the right track, you're probably on the right track. I think the production is absolutely gorgeous, and it's to the degree to which, when I got it, it just re-energized me to just want to sit and play. So I just spent the last couple of weeks, honestly, I haven't produced much of anything. I've just been sitting and playing Nevsky by myself, which, I usually don't do that with my own games. By the time they're published, I've played them so much in development, but it's just very attractive how it's been put together with the art and the quality. I think they're gonna really go for it. So officially it's supposed to ship in a few days. We're in November right now, so hopefully it does ship out of the warehouse this month, and people will start getting it and see what they think of Volume 1 of Levy and Campaign.
Well, you said that you've been playing this non-stop after getting the copy, and you don't normally do that with your own designs. What is it with this design? Is it just the attractiveness of it, or is it just have a special place in your heart for other reasons?
I think in this case, it absolutely was the physical attractiveness of it, right? Because it's one thing when you're playing on your prototype,
Sure.
Playtest materials, but there's always a lot of homemade components, everything, and I just gotta wait till you see it, because the game board and the cards and the way the counters fit and the wooden 4 units pieces, I mean, to my eye, it all just meshes beautifully, and it's that matters so much for engagement and for immersion, that the thing look good and take you there. And based on just the reaction we've had here at the con to the set being out the last couple of days, I think a lot of people are going to see that and say, wow, this is just, first of all, it's gorgeous, and second, it really takes me into the medieval feeling.
Sure.
And that's what we're trying to do with historical games, right? We're trying to, it's time travel, right? We're trying to offer you tourism to wherever. So the art is so important in transporting you to wherever we're going, medieval Russia and Crusader Livonia in this case, that affects me too. And so I'm like, okay, wow, all right, now I'm excited. You just get excited. I'm like, okay, now I want to sit down in front of this, with this in front of me for a few hours. Well, that affects the designer too.
Well, how many times have you played it now, would you guess?
Wow. I don't know. I'm sure I've played it 10 times at least in the last couple weeks.
So 10 times of the final, and then how many hundreds of times with the game in development. So that speaks volumes, though, to the production quality, how it even attracts you to the end product, on top of already having worked on it for these years.
And here's the thing: this was a project. This was difficult in terms of kind of forging ahead, new systems, researching the topic. I'm not I'm not like an expert in this or anything like that.
Sure.
And so this was a design that went through a lot of high impact development. We had a number of great test teams under developer Wendell Albright that were very active and produced a lot of data and feedback and ideas. And then I got feedback, for example, online on Twitter and BGG about, well, if somebody spotted something that was posted that was historically off, they offered corrections for that. And so I had a lot of help in that regard. Including from the region, from Latvia and from Russia, and from Scandinavia, and finally the people that I've played with at cons like this. As recently as this con a year ago, what was supposed to be sort of a demo, but right away we ran into a problem with the scenario that was easy to fix and change the rules. I was at a con overseas in January, and some feedback there were like, well, this would be better this way or that way, and that's incorporated. So this game, I think, more than any other design I can think of, Nevsky changed from the original prototype through test and development to the finished product. And so that's another thing. I played it a lot, but what I'm playing now is different from most of those games. And so then I want that affirmation. Well, did we get it right, or am I going to discover some other thing? Because you never know, right?
True.
And it's never perfect. But you never know, you've got the printed thing wide, it's beautiful and fine. Then you're like, oh, whoa, that doesn't work. Wow, how come we never caught that? Well, that has not happened here. This is another thing that's, for me, thank goodness, very fulfilling, is the way that it's performing is the way I want.
Excellent.
And that's not necessarily easy to achieve.
No, definitely not. Now, you have other titles in the series planned, correct?
Right, I do.
How many others do you have swirling around in your mind
right now I have a 4-volume series planned. And Volume 2 will be Reconquista Spain, set in 1085, 1086. But basically, Reconquista is over 700 years of medieval warfare, And so I have a wonderful researcher in Spain giving me access to the Spanish language sources, and he and I went through the history of the Reconquista looking for which campaigns are the most interesting to game, and we found what we think it is. It happens to be taking place during the lifetime of El Cid, the very famous, Spanish mercenary warrior. He's in there. It's kind of in a cameo role, but he's in there. But it's a time of the Christians surging forward against the Muslims fractured against each other, pulling together, inviting reinforcement from Africa, a very exotic fundamentalist army landing in Spain, pushing back. So it's just a very rich operational pair of years among these 700 years, right? It's just 2 years out of that. And it's called Almoravid, and it is ready to test. So I've played, it's basically a fully playable prototype. I have here. I'm going to be setting it up this afternoon to play with people. It'll be like a kind of an alpha test. You know, set up a scenario that's never been played before. I did the same thing here 2 years ago at the same SD HistCon with Nevsky. It was the first time it actually had been played. Was here. It'll be essentially the same for Almoravid, the Spanish volume, except for I've played a couple of the introductory scenarios myself a few times, right? So that, and then it's still in research, but conceptualized is I say it's at a conceptualized stage, not just a vague idea. Volume 3 will be Scotland, Longshanks, the Scots and English Spar, and that's the campaigns of 1297, 1298. So that's William Wallace, Edward I, Stirlingbridge, Falmouth. So that campaign, and then Volume 4. Right now, my thought is I want to do something out of the Crusades in the Holy Land. And so the campaign that I'm most interested in right now logistically is 1187, so it's Saladin against King Guy of Jerusalem. And so it's the preamble to the Third Crusade, right? The new Crusaders aren't there yet. It's Saladin's drive on Jerusalem.
Okay, so that's really good. Now, this is the mark of a new system.
Yes.
You're the father of coin. You're now the father of levy and campaign. Now, saying that, this is my last question to you. Going forward, how do you see wargaming changing? Because we're seeing more of a mesh, a fusion of the Euro mechanics and the wargame style of play, to where it broadens the scope of the game, of the games to people, and broadens the audience.
I hope so, and I hope that's what we're seeing, and if so, I want to be a part of that, because I think that's all for the good. What I don't see that might be a fear is, forms that work well are being left behind. I mean, you and I were just looking over Stalingrad 42, and it's absolutely gorgeous, and I know it's a Simonich design. You know that it is tight as a drum and is going to play great and have high historicity. The look of it is quite traditional. I mean, it's not. I'm not saying Mark only does traditional stuff. He does groundbreaking things too, in terms of mechanics. But he also does the traditional work at absolute ace level, right? Performance. I don't think we have to worry that we're not going to have enough new hex and counter games with combat results tables, right? So not just the mechanics, but also the form that it takes physically. Going back to the art. How we're going to use things like wooden pieces, how we're going to use in the future cards and tableaus, and some of these kind of physical aspects that have been coming into war games over the decades. And another designer we can think of is Mark Herman. Doesn't mean Mark Herman's not doing hex and counter designs today. Doing them. Of course he did. He is, but he also kind of broke some barriers when he said, well, we can use cards and point-to-point movement, right, in a new way, and it's a historical simulation that has as much validity. So that movement has accelerated, and so I'm hoping that the Coin series is a part of that story, and I'm hoping that Levy and Campaign series is part of that story. And so what I'm hoping folks will do from from whatever tribe they're in of gamers, whatever they kind of like, is, well, if what I'm after is a war game that that simulates operational warfare and tells me something, or gives me something meaty that I can challenge and say, no, I don't think that really is how it worked, that Levy and Campaign series is going to do that for you for operational medieval warfare. Right? At the same time, if you're not so attracted to the form of lots of little pieces with lots of numbers on them, that looks more like work than play to you, and you'd like to have blocks that evoke the idea of formations of knights in wedge formation charging in armor. I mean, the knights in Nevsky will glint in the sun. You will see the glint off their armor, right? It's there, it's easy to handle, and it is as historically sound as I can make it.
Well, that's a lot of good things to think about, and I'm really excited about the genesis, but the evolution, the next evolution in wargaming, as we're seeing these things mesh together. And you never know what Euro designers will come over to the wargame realm and what war game designers will go over to the Euro realm, and how maybe Euros will start having more of a heavy influence, a war game influence in it as well. So it's a great thing. It's a great
even
time
if
for
we
games.
get to the point where we say there's no realms.
Yeah.
You know, we are all wandering freely, and we have that much of a larger world to share and to exploit. Why not?
Yeah, true. That's all we got today for time with you with Volko. He's a very busy guy. We got to get him back inside. He's got a million things going on, but really appreciate you taking the time today, Volko, to sit with us. And thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.